me stop. So, you know, we here. This is about Know Your Smoke. And of course, anyone that's been inside know the Know Your Smoke initiative came from Fuquan. And I'm sure he's going to talk about that. But I understand it and understood it to be pretty much, in layman's terms, change your smoke from an individual to an institution. So usually when I talk about this, I talk about it as being my smoke will forever be against the criminal legal system. I will never call it the criminal justice system because there's no justice for us black and brown people. So that's how I see it. That's how it's been the whole time that he started this initiative, man. And inside it was phenomenal how brothers would come down with smoke from other institutions. And, you know, at that time, you know, the A.A.C.C had a conflict resolution team, which was run by Brother Seven. And he would, you know, meet up with guys and talk to them about, you know, their smoke that they had and how they could resolve whatever that smoke was. And, you know, focus on other things. Like one of the things that the main focus was focus on trying to get out of prison. Focus on your case, focus on learning your case, so that you could make it home and then come back and get somebody else, which initiated the Harriet Tubman Project. But the Harriet Tubman Project started off as, I believe, the legal law review team that we started, where we used to sit down and talk about cases and learn things from Fuquan case law and how to go about fighting your case, how to go about looking at things for your case. Then it, you know, initiated to the Harriet Tubman Project, so that, you know, you focused on coming back to get somebody when you, or like, you know, Harriet Tubman did, but it's the same concept, you know. She came back to free slaves, so we got to come back to free slaves in the Commonwealth. You know what I mean? So
nice.
That's it. And it go my girl Nika. How you doing, this lady?
Great. Good. I got my wisdom teeth out, so I'm a little poofy. Wow. But other than
well,
that,
thank you for coming on to join us. I got all the cameras set up and everything, so I'm going to go right into it, and then I'll have you introduce yourself. All right, Miss Nika? Thank you. You're glowing, though. You don't look like you're recovering.
Always.
All right, so let's get it started.
Do you really know your smoke? Do you really grasp that we are not each other's opposition, as often taught to us in the streets, and that structural racism has created and driven the genocide that we sadly normalize in our neighborhoods and in our cities? Listen and learn from those who have committed their lives and encourage us to see the value in ours, being that systems will only change when we do. Know your smoke. Positive education always corrects error. Peace.
All right, y'all. Welcome to the first episode of the Know Your Smoke podcast. We're excited. My name is Jacqueline. I'm the mystery person behind the Free Fuquan campaign. So I want to
a mystery, y'all.
So just want to introduce myself, introduce the podcast, introduce the movement that Fuquan started back in 2018. And Minister Randy really brought that movement to the streets and has been keeping it alive all these years. So we just want to shout out to Minister Randy for keeping the Know Your Smoke initiative alive, and also just really build on the brother Fuquan that started all of this and really wants us to understand that our smoke is not our brothers, it's not our sisters, it's not anyone in our community. It's those that are creating systems around us for us to fail in order for them to profit from the institutions that they are operating. So again, my name is Jacqueline Fonseca, and I want to introduce my guest co-host today.
I'm Steve Pina, but most times, I'm Steve Pina, but y'all know most of my mans call me Fat Steve, but now I introduce myself as Commonwealth versus Stephen Pina, and I do that because I'm free, but I'm still fighting. So I'm still under the Commonwealth, but that's what it is until I'm exonerated, and then we'll be right.
Yes, future exoneree, Mr. Steve Pina.
Speaking into
Yes, you have to. You have to. And our first guest, very special woman that we want to introduce, Miss Nika. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit more about who you are before we get started into the interview.
I am Nika. I think the who you are question is always funny because a lot of times we do it in terms of like what our job is. So one of the things I love about not having a job is that I could just be Nika. I mean, I do have a job, but I haven't started it yet, so you don't have to worry about me or nothing. But as it pertains to this, I have my whole life almost, like since I was, not my whole life, maybe 16 or 17, just noticed how imprisonment and enslavement are the same in this country. And as I've gotten older, that's become a more mainstream conversation because I'm going to be 50 this year. So in the 80s, not as many people were talking about mass incarceration or talking about wrongful even incarceration. Not as many people were talking about over sentencing. In fact, it was all lock them up. And when I first voted in 1992 was my first vote for president of the United States. I literally felt sick to the stomach because of my choices. And when I say literal, I mean literal. Like my stomach was turning because I had to choose between Bill Clinton and Bob Dole. And Bob Dole was basically Newt Gingrich, who you might know that name. It's an old Speaker of the House. He was like Trump before there was Trump, but not as bad. And for those that don't remember Newt Gingrich or know him. But Bill Clinton, most people will know that name. But I felt like I was the only person that was angry about his policies that were entrapping our people in slavery, in poverty, and characterizing, especially at that time, our Black men as needing to be locked up instead of needing the oppression in our system to be released so they can fully live. And I'm glad that over the decades, more people have seen that. But I don't feel that, especially in political and government circles, that has really been embraced for how we still are doing that today. People are willing to analyze the policies from 30 years ago, but will not apply the same scrutiny to these policies. So I was an elected official for a while, and that gave me special access to the inside of prisons. And that gave me access to activists like Steve and like Fuquan, who were under the worst possible circumstances that this country has to offer, at least, because it can be worse in other places, managing not only to reform their own transformation, but the transformation of others inside and outside of the walls through the reforming of our mind. And by really learning and understanding who we are, our power, but also what these systems are that we're in and what we can do about it. And so it was an honor for like almost 5 years to work with these guys. It's going to continue to be an honor to support you however I can going forward.
That was great.
That okay?
You got right to it, right to the meat and potatoes of what you do, who you are, and why you're very invested in this work. And every one of us has a why. If you don't have a why, then your passion for the work that you do will die. So it's really important to know that it really started for you in 1992 when you were torn between those two decisions and just choosing one of the lesser evils. And unfortunately, that's the system that's been created around us as well, where if we don't educate ourselves about politics and about the candidates that we're electing, we're just going into it blind. And these are decisions that affect us out here on this side of the wall, and most importantly, those that are on the other side. So thank you so much, Nika, for that introduction. Anything you want to add to that, Steve, before we get started?
No, I mean, I understand what she's saying about the voting because I got my chance to vote for the first time when I came home. But I learned about politics because of Fuquan, and because I never cared about politics. I didn't care. And I got a chance, inside to meet Nika and Russell and Liz and, the Congressional Black Caucus. And that was just like, I used to call my mother and be like, can you believe it? I'm in prison meeting legislators and lawmakers. So I definitely understand, you know, what she's talking about.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna run for no elected official, but yeah.
Not yet.
But that's why we need Fuquan out here, because there's so much impact that he would have on the political arena. You know, just I can't even. If y'all know, like they say, if you know, you know.
Right.
And we know.
So Steve, I guess my first question is for you. When was your first time meeting Nika?
I'd have to say a few years ago at an A.A.C.C meeting in the auditorium. I became a board. I was given a seat on the board at the A.A.C.C, which was a 30 board membership. And we would have meetings with Nika and Russell, and I can't give you the exact date, but I know it was some years ago.
That's good enough. We don't need the exact date, but
okay.
It's been a relationship that started within the prison system, and now that you're free, I actually met the both of you at an event at the DeWitt Center, working in this field, working for this mission, and really using your voices to elevate that platform, and people like Fuquan and those that are out here still fighting for their freedom. So I appreciate that you guys have been consistent in what you've been doing since the beginning. So go ahead. I know you have some questions for Nika.
Yeah, I got a question. I got a few questions, because when I think about you and I think about Fuquan, right? So one of the first things I wanted to ask you is when you hear the name Fuquan, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Brother, because you probably know, like, he and I are very close. And it feels like that's been since we were kids, even though we only met maybe 5 years ago. I think it's mutual. We've talked about it a little bit. And I feel like he's not just a brother in the sense of spiritually, because, you know, I have a lot of spiritual brothers. But like, I feel like he's my brother. and I also feel like our minds work similarly, because we enjoy, I think, being able to understand something on a big structural level, but also just on the tiny, how it's impacting one person. And we help each other stay focused, and we help each other remain resilient, not in the popular way of resilience, like persevering, coming back, but resilient to the focus on really going to the heart of what power transfer and justice reformation looks like for our people. And I feel like I learn a lot from him, and he gives a lot to everyone, but I feel like there's a special way that we can connect and really take each other to the next level in our thinking, but also in our hearts.
So can you tell us of the first time you met Fuquan at A.A.C.C or at Norfolk?
Yeah, it was like February, I think, in 2018 was our first time meeting in person. And Russell Holmes had invited some members of the Black Caucus, the Black and Latino Caucus at the Massachusetts State House, to come with him to meet with this group called African American Coalition Committee. And he knew from me that I had some interest, that I'm a prison abolitionist, and I had some interest in working with leaders inside the walls, which I had never done at that point. Like, I've talked to people inside the walls, but not people who were leading inside the walls, leading activism, leading intellectual development of people around the concepts that we need to be fighting for legally, as well as just in terms of like an ideology, thought leadership. And he was like, oh, I have just the people. And so the board was having a meeting, and so the A.A.C.C has a couple hundred plus members, but the board is like 25, 30 guys that are each leading some aspect of the A.A.C.C, whether it be focused on culture, music, education, or there's like a whole range of kind of subcommittees, like any board of any nonprofit organization. And so I was just visiting with a few other legislators, and my mind was kind of blown because it was a board meeting, and I have been to hundreds of organizational meetings, many board meetings. I was a board development consultant for many years. I had seen many boards in this country and even in other countries, and interacted with them, but I had never experienced what was happening there, which was like things were just getting done in the meeting. It was like boom, 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 boom. It was highly organized and efficient, yes, which is already unusual. But the content is what was important. The content was both spiritual and emotional. It wasn't just tactical and transactional. There was transformation happening in that moment. You saw leaders being developed, developing other leaders. You could see the intentionality and the intentionality to make sure everybody could speak and that we could hear their voices and that they could hear their own voice in many times. That like almost every meeting, there's somebody who's speaking out for the first time and they're being encouraged to take a leadership role. And that was really powerful. And so I asked Fuquan, who was at that time, I think the president or the chair, I forget the exact title. And so he was leading some of the meeting. And so I asked him if we could just continue to have some meetings and conversations so I could learn more about the subject matter, particularly the things that were being shared by Country, who was another leader who we're trying to get out, and some others who are in the education piece. They had done some constitutional analysis of the United States Constitution that was introducing concepts around certain constitutional rights and particularly around equal protection that I had never heard as it applies to incarceration. And so they took me on and they taught me that stuff. And then it became part of my professional and legislative agenda. Now I'm moving to federal. I'm moving down to DC this weekend for a federal job. But at the state level, you have a different constitution, so I wasn't able to apply it as much. But I was able to do with some teams I built some research around it, and it highly impacted some of the work we did on the analysis of structural racism at incarcerated facilities in Massachusetts. So that was just our first meeting, and then it only got more full after that.
Wow. Okay.
It was like a 3-hour meeting. So even though I took a long time to explain it, like a lot more happened than what I said.
And to keep in mind, this is happening with people that are incarcerated, people that are labeled as prisoners or murderers or convicts. Like these are the brilliant minds that are trapped under those labels. And you came in as a professional learning and being inspired by these men. And that's really impactful. It sounds like a very overwhelming day that you had in a good way.
I wasn't overwhelmed yet, but I would later go on to be overwhelmed. It takes a lot to overwhelm me. I was like a kid in a candy shop, like more. But eventually, when they got like 3 or 4 of them geniuses that are on A.A.C. all on me at the same time, that was like 3 or 4 meetings later. Then I got overwhelmed. I was like, y'all are going too fast for me. Like, I need you to slow down. That doesn't happen to me a lot because my brain also works very fast. I'm not as fast as when I was younger. But these guys are like close in age to me, and their brains are still flying at the speed that I hadn't even experienced at the height of my like crazy brainness, 18, 20 years old. And they were very patient to explain things over and over again until I really got it. And so you don't stay overwhelmed for long when you have a good teacher because they help you kind of like resettle. And it was mutual. It was like learning. I was teaching, I was learning, but I was taking more out of it. From my perspective, I was taking more out of it than I was giving, even though I was giving what I could. But my hope is that what I was taking out of it will stay with me for life. because it didn't just change how I think about things, and help me evolve my own vocabulary and my own ability to articulate the experience through the eyes of someone incarcerated better than I could before, even though I'll never achieve the level of somebody who is or has been incarcerated. But mostly it changed my heart. And because my heart was in a state of just warrior. I have trouble saying that word, like warrior. You know what I'm trying to say, like fighter. Yeah. But then I realized there was a lot of hope. Like, it's happening. This is happening now. In my heart before, it was like, I'm gonna die fighting for this, and nobody's gonna listen. Because when I started out saying these types of things at 17, 18, in high school and college, even our own people, they were like, you know, prison is prison, whatever. You break the law, you go to jail. You know, it's just like not understanding really what was going on. And the older I got, the more people I met, and the younger generation too, they know so much about this, and the vocabulary is there, but the hope isn't always there. You know what I'm saying? And so when you see people like Fuquan and Steve, who downplays himself way too much, I just want to say, when you see people like them and their brilliance and like what they're doing with that, you know, okay, this system's only going to last but so long. Because when you have great minds like this that are giving generously to all of us, then that in and of itself is dismantling the inequity. And eventually, should we remain diligent, we're going to see all the walls come down. And it may be my grandchildren or their kids that are like shocked that we ever used to imprison people like that in such a barbaric, you know, like they might be like, what? That used to happen? Like, I really am believing that now. And so that was one of the biggest gifts I took away from all of y'all at A.A.C.C. And Fuquan really protected my spirit in that, from the when you would get dejected otherwise.
And for me, experiencing that and seeing you and him interact and realizing like everyone in that circle on that board, they have their own, you know, thoughts and smarts. But I think anyone, which is leading to my second question, I think anyone that comes in contact with Fuquan comes out learning something. And I know when he asked me to become a member of the board, I was reluctant. And he was like, nah, great mind. And yo, come on, man. I see something in you. And I was scared. I sat in a lot of meetings and didn't say anything. And he'd be like, come on, great mind. And it inspired me to get more involved. So my second question would be, what have you learned from meetings and talking with and to Fuquan?
So one time, this happened more than one time, but I'm just going to tell one story. We were breaking into small groups because I was going up like once or twice a month, either online or in person, depending, like COVID kind of like shook it up a bit. But and so we were having some regular meetings. So I would just be joining whatever the A.A.C.C. was already doing, just to give you a sense of what's happening. It wasn't that first type of meeting where they're making a presentation to me or someone. And so I was giving my report back and whatever I had been assigned. It might have been you, Steve. somebody started complaining about two things. Like, basically, Nika, we want you to be more attentive to the day-to-day things we're having to deal with. And two, we want you to come at the superintendent a little more forcefully. I remember that meeting. Sounds like you're doing. And I kind of went off on people, basically. Just like, I'm not your babysitter or your social worker. Like, I went off so I was like, I know you need all of that stuff, and it's not why I'm here. You know, like, And I'm not stupid. Like I know your leadership is X, Y, and Z. Like, who do you think I am? Why do you think I'm spending my time here? Like, I lost it just a little bit on purpose, but a little bit. And I knew that I had maybe gone a little too far because instead of pushing back, almost everybody was like, no, we didn't mean to offend you. Which isn't what I was expecting. I thought we were about to lock horns, which I'm always good with, you know? But they didn't want to like seem disrespectful or like they were diminishing me. I didn't feel diminished at all. I just felt like we were brothers and sisters and y'all were checking me on something that I didn't feel like I needed to be checked on. I was trying to set straight. My reason for being here is systemic, because the thing that upsets me is our people get so bogged down by the details of our persecution, right? And that's been the case since the physical enslavement days, that we're not trying to take down the system. And you could spend all day trying to address this thing that somebody said to you or did to you or took from you wrongly and never actually deal with why that can happen every single day. And it requires enormous and difficult focus to stay on track. And so that's what I was trying to do. And that's why I a little bit lost it, because not because y'all were wrong in asking that, but because it was already so hard for me to hold on because of the intense pain that I feel about what everybody's dealing with day to day. And all of us are, but especially our incarcerated men and women and people. But I didn't say, I feel pain about what you're going through. And so I'm having I didn't like dispassionately say, and so I'm having a strong reaction now because this is really hard for me to stay focused on, and I feel like you're pulling me from that focus, and I feel like you're right to pull me from the focus, and I'm right to pull right back. I didn't say it like that. I just yelled at them a little bit, and they were just like, sorry. And then Fuquan steps in, and he says something like, in these last few weeks, these are some of the things I've experienced. And he lays out some high-level persecution that he had been targeted and experienced. That is not untypical for him or for some of the other people, especially who are in leadership. And he said, Nika is right. If I were to focus on that, we would not be having these conversations about how to change our life situations forever, so that we cannot be put through those things ever. He said it better, but he basically brought it back to his personal experience. So unlike myself, he was able to say, I am putting aside my own hurts because I'm not going to give them a moment to have a victory over me because of those things. And I'm not going to give the system the victory of me losing my focus when my mind is required here. And Nika and I are asking you to do the same thing with us. If you want to be in the group that helps people with their day-to-day, there are groups assigned for that. Go to those groups. And there are legislators that's their skill set. So go to those legislators. And I felt very supported there, but what you all didn't know is that if Fuquan hadn't said that, I would have left questioning everything I had ever done with you. I would have left thinking, maybe I'm wrong, because the main thing that was making me think I'm right is these guys telling me that I'm on the right track. So if they're coming and telling me, we don't really want the systemic crap, we want you to go talk to the superintendent about the fact that my visit was 5 minutes cut off, you know, which is a real thing. I'm not trying to diminish that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you could do that 100 times and it'll still happen 101st time. And that's what frustrates me. And so I was, even though I was yelling at you, because like many of you guys, that is how I react to being confronted. Sometimes if I'm close to the person, what an inside I was feeling was like discouraged. Like, if they don't see it, then maybe I'm seeing it wrong. And Fuquan exercising that leadership where he was able to stand where you were standing and stand where I was standing and and repair that bridge made me realize, like, I need to stay the course. I need to stay the course because these guys are under incredible pressure because that was in a male facility. So everybody, well, actually, I think there might have been one transgender person, but it was mostly guys. And they have been under enormous pressure. And so, of course, sometimes they're going to feel like losing the focus. And what I learned in that moment is it's up to me to help you hold your focus when you're the one who's experiencing the more pain. Just like I need somebody to do that for me. And Fuquan did that for me in that moment. But sometimes I'm going to have to lead when nobody else can see it. And I have learned that lesson, I don't know, maybe 1,000 times in 50 years. But every time you learn it, you have to learn it again. You know what I'm saying? And you need somebody to help you by modeling. And that's what Fuquan did right there, because he took a risk as well, you know. And I just learned that perseverance isn't just about being strong-willed or restating your claims or holding your ground. It's about holding on to that focus and belief in your heart and being able to articulate that in a way that relates to people their day-to-day instead of alienates their day-to-day, like it doesn't matter. Like you just have to suck it up. But that shows the relationship between what you're doing and the day-to-day, even if it's not a one-on-one direct. Like we're just going to focus on the visits, or we're just going to focus on the canteen or whatever.
As Fuquan says, we all want to see stuff in the nowadays. And what you were doing and what you expressed to us at that time was you were looking at the broader picture. And that's how Fuquan's mind, like he looks at the broader, like the strategically, let's build for, you know, now, but also as he's like I with the nowadays, but moving forward as well. And I think when you express that to us, that's what we saw. Like, okay, yeah, I'm looking at what's going to happen down the line.
1 second. I just want to add on to that because I think it touches right on the nose with the Know Your Smoke initiative and the Know Your Smoke campaign, that we're not here to fight individuals, and there's a system built around us to bring us down as a whole. The system doesn't isolate Jackie or Steve or Nika. The system isolates and targets our community, and that's the way that they're looking at us. So we have to look at it the same way when we're trying to fight the system. We have to create a system to fight the system. And what you guys did with the commission report in December that came out in 2022, I actually have it right here, the legislative commission report that you helped advocate very strongly for the A.A.C.C. to put together, is create policies, create you know, literature that the lawmakers can look at in their language, in their culture, that they'll be able to understand. Otherwise, if we're screaming about our own individual struggles, it's never going to get to them. We have to be organized and we have to do it together. So I really am impressed by how you all work together from the prisons all the way out to come up with something so powerful that has created jobs. And when I read through the commission report, it wasn't just racial, racial systematic oppression. It was also that of the LGBTQ, the poor community, even the prison guards and the COs, and how they hire staff and they don't think about diversity in the staffing and stuff like that. So I was really impressed by what Fuquan would say, the macro vision that was taken upon this, because it wasn't micro into anyone's narrative. It really, we can all identify with it on some level. So with Know Your Smoke, we really have to combat the system as a system and come together, and our smoke is not one another. So I really think it just touches on point, that story, with just the way that Fuquan thinks and how he brings people together. So thank you for sharing that story.
I mean, learning about it, I got it tattooed on me, Know Your Smoke. I got a tattoo on my forearms that says an injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And it's Know Your Smoke. And people say, that's Martin Luther King. Yeah, it is. But you got to know your smoke. So that is forever with me, will always be with me, and I will talk about it, you know, as long as I can. So.
Yep. That's also La Fuquan, which is the Martin Luther King, the Malcolm X of our generation. Sometimes we're so stuck on what's happened that we don't see the leaders in front of us today. And what brought us all here today is the leadership and the impact that Fuquan has had on all of us. And this is, if Malcolm X was in prison right now, and we knew that, I think that there would be a louder roar, a louder, initiative to free Malcolm. And he is our Malcolm of today. That's the way that I see it. And that's the way a lot of us have seen it. So, I think that the work that he's done is really going to impact generations to come. I know it will, because it's already impacted so many people in this generation.
Because there are guys coming out that went in with mindsets that were just savage. Mm-hmm. And they're coming out with mindsets that are productive. And a lot of these brothers, it's because they met a Fuquan, or because they met a Sean Ellis, a scientific, you know what I'm saying? And to listen to these brothers build, it was just beyond me. But a lot of these brothers that have come home. No, really, because when him and Scientific used to talk, right? Scientific and Sean Ellis, when they used to build, and I'd be in that listening to them, I'd be confused. I'd pick up on a little bit of stuff, but to listen to them was inspiring. It made you want to. If you wasn't doing right, it made you want to do right. It made you want to change. Because prison either makes you or it breaks you. Some guys go in and they come home and they're just as bad, and other guys come home and they do productive things. And it's just an amazing feeling. I think we lost Nika.
Uh-oh.
Oh, shoot.
she'll request herself back. Okay. On that note, I do want to take a commercial break. The Streets Lied and We Believe. This is a book written by Devon McNeil, otherwise known as Divine Victory. Someone that spent time with Fuquan, learned from him, was an avid student, completely transformed his entire life from being a murderer to now being a mentor and a leader in the community, where he's helping young men and young ladies come out of the street lifestyle, or not even go to it, and give them an alternative. So he was able to completely transform himself mentally. He gives his props to Fuquan to being able to free him mentally, and then physically he was able to free himself with that knowledge. And now he's an author, he's a nonprofit owner and leader, a mentor in our community, and the sky's the limit to what he's going to be able to do. And that's just one story.
Shout outs to Victory Bones, Team Street Team. If you guys follow me or follow him, y'all see the work he's doing, and that's what I can say.
Let's get Nika back. Okay. Oh, we got a few requests. Okay.
Well, we got to get Nika.
Yeah, we got to get Nika back. It's good to know people want to build with us.
Yeah, I'm glad to see there's a lot of people on this live, and we back. So we go into the third question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I already know how he impacted you, right? The question was, when you met him, how has it impacted you now and moving forward? We already know how it impacted you now. So now that you're getting ready to go to a different realm, I'm going to say, federal, which is a higher, how has meeting him, how will that impact you moving forward?
A lot of different ways. I'm going to focus in on something that I would think would be very important to Fuquan for people to hear, which is how to multiply him. Because A.A.C.C works on multiplying various types of leadership even within MCI Norfolk. But right before I went out of my final and second term, I was able to talk to a couple of leaders from other institutions in Massachusetts that were like, we're trying to do A.A.C.C here, and we're not getting the support that even you are giving at Norfolk. And having learned the lesson from my last story, instead of being defensive, I was like, I know that's been very painful to have to focus on one place in order to be effective, but we all got to multiply ourselves. And we really need you and leaders like you to help us do that. But now looking federally, I'll be looking at that nationally. If the senator that I'm working for, you know, that's, so as a state rep, that's a small district, but you're in the top position basically in that tiny district. Now I'm going to federal and I'm not the top position. I'm not the decision maker, right? The U.S. senator is a decision maker until if and then one day I should run for and win for Senate. I'm working for him. And so I have a much bigger district, the whole of Massachusetts, plus he is doing legislation for the whole country. And so we can utilize the models from the A.A.C.C. and figure out how are we going to build that to multiply incarcerated activism and leadership and to amplify their voices. As you know, yeah, Mackie, I do have his ear, and trust me, he's already getting an earful. But he seems to like it so far, so we'll see what happens. Talking about the senator. But as you know, Steve, and I think Jackie and I just met, but I think the little that we've talked, you know this as well. There is an art to multiplying what our people do without allowing it to be stolen or co-opted by the very system that had tried to shut it down in the first place. You see what I'm saying? Because once there's a bandwagon, everybody wants to have credit for it. Even that Structural Racism Commission report, it was very, it was an art for me, it's me personally, to understand how to navigate the system so that I could amplify the voice of A.A.C.C. because it was their idea, it was their intellectual property, it was their rollout, and I was like on a team where we shared intellectual capital and edited everything. And the legislature debated and shut down the debate on allowing the incarcerated people to be on the legislative commission itself. And so we had to get all of that done in a way that preserved their centrality of the voice, even though the law would not recognize their role. And somebody very powerful, I'm not going to say who's no longer in office, and no longer in government, and I didn't tell anybody, many people, but in November, December, somebody tried to stop that report from coming out by attacking me personally and saying that I have broken and violated laws in the publication of the report. I am a lawyer. I am a Black woman, and I am by nature analytical. So they picked the wrong person to come out with that ridiculousness. So we just shut it down pretty fast. But just to show you, like, it went from there to now everybody wants to be the one who's taking credit for it. Okay. And so my concern is that A.A.C.C.'s contribution, if they can't hide it, because we put it front and center, I was like, I'm putting Fuquan under letters from the chairs. Okay, everybody? Okay. Because he was a chair. Even though the law didn't recognize it, we're going to recognize it. But at the same time, when they can't shut it down, then they try to take it over. They try to use A.A.C.C. And A.A.C.C., you guys have got it. I'm not worried about that. But that's something on my mind going forward. When we replicate and multiply, how can we do that in a way where we're also replicating the power being held by our folks and by incarcerated people, and not just using the same words that A.A.C.C. uses, but actually it's a puppet string for something else. And so that's something I'm trying to be very mindful of. And the only people that can guard against that is incarcerated people themselves.
Well, one thing I know for sure about you moving forward is any credit that goes to the A.A.C.C, you will make sure that it gets there. You know what I'm saying? I've seen it firsthand where you've given the credit to A.A.C.C for some of the things that I've pushed forward. So for that, I thank you for.
Yeah, and we'd love to see an A.A.C.C in women's prisons, in the juvenile system as well, and all across the country, because I think we have something really special here at MCI Norfolk, but to be able to duplicate that and duplicate those personalities, those strong leaders within that organization, we'll really be able to abolish this legal slavery and correct it in a way where justice is actually being served and it's not punishment and enslavement anymore. So thank you.
My next question baffles me sometimes. And I thought a long time ago that it would turn out different. And as much as I love being home, there was a time when I felt my brother should have been home first because of the impact that he would have had out here in the streets with people. So I have to, what do you think can be done to bring Fuquan home? Like, I can't say he's wasting away because that's not his nature. That's not his, he'll never waste away wherever he's at. And I know his mind is free, but we know, and anyone that knows Fuquan knows the impact that he would have out here. So what can we do? Like, I don't know. What can we do?
So I do want to come to, you're asking more than one question in my mind. Because there's like logistically, what can we do to physically bring him home? So
Yeah.
I'll come to some thoughts about that, just like, you know, procedurally. But I think, and I believe and hope that Fuquan would 100% agree with me on this. We can't focus on him coming home physically as being the homecoming that we're looking at. Every time A.A.C.C sends another person out into the community home, Fuquan is coming home. And the first thing we got to do is not lose sight of that and keep waiting on something to like, we're going to wait for Fuquan. And if only Fuquan was here, then X, Y, and Z. You have twice now, Steve, a little bit maybe brushed it off when I and Jackie joined in the second time, have been like, you are one of these men. You're like, oh, but no, not like them. You know, they're like this. You're not identical to them. They're not identical to each other. But you have the same power, the same high capacity in your mind, the same even experiences that have shaped you. And the fact that you think about it and talk about it differently is critical to the success of the movement. And it is just not true that there's something that can't happen until Fuquan gets out. Fuquan needs to get out because of justice. Fuquan needs to get out because he doesn't belong there. And frankly, that applies to several thousand of the 8,000 people that are in there, that they never should have been there. And as far as I'm concerned, the rest of them shouldn't be there now, because it's not a situation that actually makes anybody better. But 70-80% of the people I meet when I'm in there once or twice a month, they don't even need to be there based on the current conception of prison, so I disagree with that conception. But even if we just agree for now, like, you know, delay the gratification of like figuring out the argument. If we're like, just take prison for what it's supposed to be. People say that it's supposed to protect society from danger, and it's supposed to rehabilitate people. Well, even if you falsely think that prison is doing that, it's done for Fuquan. Like, it's done. It was done decades ago. So even on the current system, it's an injustice for him to be in there without any reform. So Fuquan needs to come out for justice reasons. And that procedurally is the argument we need to make to the governor and to the governor's council that makes those types of decisions about commutations and even about pardons. But pardon is different because that has to do with your crime, but a commutation has to do with your sentence. Because, you know, like, anybody listening might know, like, pardon means like you're forgiven. Commutation means you've served your time and it was less than the time you were allotted, but that was more time than was necessary. And so you get your sentence commuted. And the governor can't make that decision alone. They make it with the governor's council. A lot of people don't know that the governor's council is also an elected body. They fly under the radar. These are the people that make the recommendation to the governor for even, I think, pardons even. I'm not sure about that. But for commutations and various things related to probation and whatnot, somebody in the chat might know, Mackie, but this is some, like, we need to get to the bottom of that governor's council. Why don't they look nothing like us when they're making all the decisions about us? We don't even know who they are. And these people, I think they get paid and everything. It's like a position, okay? And we need people in there that aren't just going to be like us, but or even just look like us or even think like us. But we need champions, because even when you look at, like, let's say you take Black people and immigrants, okay? Not every single one of us is on board, right, with decarceration. And then you just take Black and brown people with decarceration on board. Okay, now just take the ones that have lived experience, themselves or family members. Even if you just look at that group, not all of those people are able to be a champion. There's experience, there's personality, there's leadership, there's courage. And so we need to have a high standard for who gets in those positions. And when they get in those positions, then we can hold them accountable and also help them to make the right decision. Now, that's too long for Fuquan, but we got to think of Fuquan as like the one of many. He's not a messiah, you know, and even Malcolm X was not like presenting himself as a savior. He wanted us to free our minds. And that's the process that he contributed to with many others. And people like Malcolm X, they are the sum of hundreds and thousands of people that made them who they are. And of hundreds and thousands of people that come out of who they are. That's the same with Fuquan. So yeah, we need to get on the governor about commutation. We need to get on parole. We need to get on, you know, all these places. We need to send the letters and do all that type of stuff. But the fact is, we can't wait for that and should not be waiting for that. And it's a dishonor to Fuquan's service for us to expect it to fall to him when he gets out. Now, each one of us has a special role. Nobody can be me. Nobody can be Jackie. Nobody can be Steve. And those roles are as important in this movement as Fuquan's. And so the number one thing is to stay up off of our own butts and to stay focused. And if we need a rest, that's fine, because we got each other, like, you know, like a tag team. But then we got to get back in the ring when it's time and just keep going. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, but let me just say, commutation, great, but let it be clear. Fuquan is innocent, wrongfully convicted, and I've been saying two things since I've been home. One of those I got from him. And everybody that knows me and follows me on Facebook knows I come out and I say #never not working. I got that from Fuquan. Never not working, and that's him. Never not working to get home, never not working to better the black and brown men and women around him. That's his thing. I told him I'm taking it and I'm running with it. And the other one is other side of the wall. And I added we bounce back, because we've come on the other side of the wall. And there's so many brothers that have come and learned from Fuquan, and they're doing great things. So to me, that's a bounce back. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to be clear. He's 100% innocent, and pardon would be much better, or overturn and exoneration would be the greatest thing. But like you said, Nika, there are brothers out here carrying on the work, and yeah, I downplay it because I just got to give credit where credit's due, and I know my lane. I stay in my lane.
So we have 3 minutes left, and I want to play a recording from Fuquan so we can wrap this up on time. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Because you speak from a perspective that neither Nika nor I have been in. Thank you, Nika, because you speak from a perspective that a lot of politicians haven't been in and don't desire to be, to really learn from the people. And we're just going to end this with Fuquan's words.
Peace to Queen Nika. Right, Nika, you've been an incredible ally, an incredible friend in this journey of curtailing structural racism, curtailing the invisibility that many men behind the wall and many women behind the wall feel as they try to allow for their voices to be heard in spaces that have normalized their dehumanization. You've been a counselor. You've been a great ear. You've been someone that I've been comfortable and allowed me to guide me in many areas where others were afraid to. I thank you for everything you offered me personally and what you offered A.A.C.C and other spaces we built publicly. The relationship that we built is one that I will forever cherish because it was always based on substance. And although you're no longer a state rep, you'll forever be my representative because you've always validated the work that you gave your word to. And as you venture on into new and foreign spaces, just know that you have a legion of those that are committed to work side by side with you to do the work we're both committed to. So in truth, although I have two sisters, Dominica and Shanika, with the name Nika, I forever have a third, which is Nika. And whenever you need me, whenever you call on me, I'm there because you've always been there for me. So I appreciate the love, support, the energy, and the consistency. With that said, I love you, sis. Stay focused. I appreciate everything